Welcome to the Tea of Life podcast, where our mission is to transform every area of life by encouraging and equipping you to live the life you love and love the life you live. I am your host, Tiffany Thompson. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Tea of Life podcast. I am excited that you are here. You know, change is hard. It is so hard. People can say that they like change, but not a lot of people like to change. Or to be more exact, people don't like to be changed. Some people do like to try to change us, though, and I'm probably going to get into that a little bit on this episode as well. So sometimes change is necessary in order for things to be different. Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. So sometimes we decide to change ourselves or our circumstances because we're bored with where we are. The boredom forces us to get past it and do something else, or actually do something. Some of us have been taught that we should never be bored because that's when the devil creeps in and bad things happen. Then there's also those that say that if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. So which is it? Is he going to creep into my boredom, or is he going to creep into my busyness? I think that we can actually get into the habit of being bored, just like we can get into the habit of feeling like we have to be busy all the time, or the habit of always having too much to do and saying yes to everything, too much to take care of. That's not necessarily good or bad, and what could be good for one person can be really bad for another. We can each handle different amounts of stuff and busyness, I suppose. Some of us need to slow down and actually be bored for a while. And a lot of great creativity can actually come out of boredom. And some of us need to slow down or stop and smell the roses, so to speak. So whichever habit you tend to have is proprietary to you, and you're the only person who can get yourself unstuck from the boredom or from the overfilled lifestyle. And you're the only person who can change it for yourself. Sometimes all it takes is a decision to change in order to change. And sometimes it takes a lot more to make that change happen. But if all you do is plan to change without actually making the change, you will never change yourself or your circumstances. So in order to change, you must form a new habit, one that allows you to do something different. Like I said before, if you continue to do the same thing over and over again, change will never take place, and you run the risk of insanity. Maybe not the kind of insanity that constitutes to needing to be admitted into an insane asylum, but insanity to the point of driving yourself and everyone else around you crazy because you are too bored or too busy. You also run the risk of no one wanting to be around you because of your insane thought process. So when you're too bored, you can develop an "oh, woe is me" attitude, and no one likes to hear that. Think back when you were a kid, and maybe you actually have kids now who whine when they're bored. Maybe they hang on you like a heavy, wet, oversized towel and expect you to rescue them from their despair. Don't do it. Their boredom creates a great opportunity for them to learn to establish new habits themselves. We must establish a habit before we can change or improve upon it. Our new habit must be in the form or shape of what we desire for ourselves. These habits are individualized for each of us, and I cannot form new habits for you, and you cannot form new habits for me. If we want to change, we must change our habits ourselves. We must first be the one to establish the new habit before we can be the one to actually improve upon it. The best way to start a new habit is to start small. Remember last week when I said that small change is still change? A small step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction. Oh, 1 or a 0.5% change is still change. And surrounding ourselves with different people also allows us to change because different people are different. And it's a good idea to surround ourselves with people who are already doing the habits that we'd like to adopt. I talked a lot about this in my last episode. So this also goes for our kids. And we have the ability to choose where we live, where we go to church, what activities our kids are involved in, and where our kids go to school, etc. We should find kids who are learning and forming habits that you would like your kids to have, and maybe join that group. Find a way for your kids to be a part of that group, and parents, get involved in that group. Do not just drop your kids off and expect that the group will do all the work for you. It's our job to raise our own kids and not someone else's. So while you're doing this, you need to find a group that lines up with your kids' natural desires and talents. Don't be a part of a group just because that's the group that you, the parent, wants. Don't join a group just because that's the group that you wanted to be a part of when you were a kid, and your kid is now, you want your kid now to fulfill your dreams and desires or fulfill your inadequacy as a kid. Don't do that to your kid. Find something that your kid will enjoy and do that. Remember when you were a kid, or maybe you're teaching your kids this right now, and people told you that you become the people that you surround yourself with. I talked a little about this on my episode not too long ago called Defining Financial Success. And sometimes forming a new habit may involve new friends. As I mentioned in my last podcast, we become the people that we hang out with most. We want to seek out those who are already doing or want to also be doing what we want to be doing, and we want to do it with them. Do it together. Having that like friendship can be exactly what you need in order to make a change, but don't use the lack of that as an excuse. You cannot use the lack of friendship as an excuse to not change your goals or to not reach your goals. You need to have the courage and build up the strength to do it anyway, in spite of. Remember, it is up to you, not anyone else. However, if you do find some of those keen like friendships, try to spread yourself out a little. Don't expect any one friend or any one person to be able to fulfill every need or desire that you have or be with you with everything that you want to do. If you do, you will definitely wear that person out, and they will grow very tired of being your everything. No one person should be your everything, not even your spouse. That is a very heavy burden to ask someone to bear. It is important to surround yourself with a lot of different people. No one person can fulfill every emotional need that we have. We cannot expect one person to provide all of our emotional stability. Having this is the definition of a codependent relationship, and that is very unhealthy. So Ryan Nicodemus from The Minimalist said in one of their podcasts that you cannot express good habits in a toxic environment. You need to make sure that you surround yourself with people who allow you to practice good habits like being able to say no, and not surround yourself with people who don't allow you to say no. This means your job, your friends, and yes, even your family. Sometimes other people can tell you that you need to change or try to change you themselves. They do this by suggesting ways that you can be different or ways that they think that you can be better. Just because someone else thinks that you need to change doesn't mean that you need to change. There are times when other people get stuck in their own insanity and they want you to join them. And there are times when other people may want to change you in order to fix you. But if you are not actually broken in the first place, then that change cannot take place. The actual change that I'm talking about today in this episode is a change that comes from inside you, that comes from within. And that feeling that comes from when you know that you need to change, not simply when others tell you that you need to change. Your desire to change or form new habits should come from within yourself. Broken relationships, or maybe even the lack of relationships, can force you to change, but it still has to come from inside you. It has to be your choice. Think about the relationships that you have with other people. How are they? Do you seem to have a relationship problem everywhere you go, or is it strictly in one environment? If you tend to have relationship problems everywhere you go, then maybe you do need to make some changes or habit adjustments. But if it's just in one environment and all your other relationships are great and fantastic, then maybe you're not actually the problem after all, but the environment is. Maybe the environment is toxic and your environment is what needs to change or be changed. But it's not up to you to change the people in your environment. They need to see that they need to change, just like I'm telling you today. A few months ago on my personal Facebook page, I touched on this a bit with this statement. I said, when we tell someone they're broken long enough, they become broken, even if they were never broken to begin with. Sometimes we see a reflection of our own weaknesses in another person and perceive it as the other person needing to be fixed. If by chance we were able to convince that person to get help, and they do, but nothing changes, then perhaps it wasn't them who was broken to begin with. Maybe it was us all along. So if you're told that you need to change or that you need to get help, you need to analyze why that person may be telling you this. Is it because the relationship is strained in some way and they blame you for it, telling you that you are the one who is broken and needs to be fixed? Think about what others may be saying about that person or those people who are telling you these things, and think about what other people may be saying about you. So don't get caught up in the discussions, because that never leads to anything good either. But just listen. Could it be that the other person who perceives things to be bad is because of their own brokenness? Or is it because it's truly you that needs to change your habits? We see this a lot in narcissistic relationships. Is it actually the other person who needs to change their attitude or thought process toward you? If you've fallen for this and have gotten help and have seen a positive change in yourself, but the relationship is still broken, maybe you weren't the broken one to begin with. Congratulations, you are better now than you were before. So, however, don't suddenly throw out the help that you received during this process. You were good then, but you're better now. And that will go a long way in other and future relationships that you have. So I was once in a relationship with someone who wanted me to change for their benefit and had convinced me that I was the one that was broken. I tried to make them happy by being the person that they wanted me to be and by changing and getting the help that they told me that I needed. And all it did was make me more and more miserable. However, as it turned out, this person was extremely toxic themselves, but it took me years in this relationship to realize this. And once I came to this realization, I did everything that I could in order to break off the relationship. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever done because I was so convinced that it was me all along. But I ended up rebuilding my confidence in myself and building new relationships all around me. And I was able to do this just by being myself. And as it turns out, I didn't actually need that change at all. The only change that I needed was a new perspective on the situation. So I say all this because in your process of trying to change your habits, we may need to make sure that it's because we are the one who recognizes that the change needs to take place, not because someone else told us that we need to change. Maybe take a look at the majority of the people around you and what they're saying. Check and make sure that you actually have people who want to be around you. If you find that you are full of people surrounding you with love and love who you are and the way that you are, and you might want to listen to them. And if you cannot find many people who want to be around you or many people around you, you may kind of want to listen to that as well. So if you're in a relationship with someone who does not allow you to say no, that is not a healthy relationship. We need to feel the freedom of saying no to the things that do not line up with our own convictions. Remember the 7 simple steps to loving your life episode? In that, I explain my 7 simple steps to loving your life, hence the name. And I say that step number 5 is to say no to the things that do not line up with your why. We can sometimes find ourselves in relationships that don't allow us to say no. And it can be a family relationship, a friendship, or even a work relationship or environment that doesn't allow us to say no. And these environments are usually not healthy and can be considered toxic. We need the ability to say no in order to say yes to the things that really matter. Sometimes change can come in the simplest ways. Studies show that we are more likely to move forward and get something done if we actually write it down. For example, I am going to do that, and I'm going to do it then. And you can also add a reward at the end of it and say something like, when I achieve this or that, I'm going to binge watch that Netflix show that I've been wanting to watch. Or I'm going to see that movie that I've been wanting to see. Or I'm going to go read that book that I've been wanting to read. Or my favorite, I'm going to take that nap that I've been wanting to take. Sometimes we cannot change because we have too many things in our way and we need to clear some space. So Joshua Fields Millburn and The Minimalist, yes, I am quoting something else from The Minimalist. He says that you don't get unstuck with more planning. You get unstuck with less friction. This isn't just in our living room or our bedroom. This can also be in our heads. We hear people all the time saying that they don't have enough head space for this or that. And yeah, clearing out the clutter in our physical space is very important. In fact, I have a large box currently sitting in our living room right now that could actually fit a small body inside of it. And it is currently filled to the rim of things that we don't need and are going to donate. Things that have been getting in our way. Whenever we find something, we throw it in that box. And eventually, I'll take it and get rid of it. And it's things that don't line up with our why. I am consistently finding things that are in my way. And I've learned to quickly and unemotionally throw them into that box and say goodbye. I have come to the realization that my physical space is way more important than the item that can fill it. Within reason, of course. I mean, there are some things that I do need to keep and have around the house. And, I could probably talk about that in an upcoming episode. So changing and moving forward can be seriously hard. And we may find every excuse that we can in order not to do it. We can also plan our way out of moving forward or changing. We can plan to change, but if we don't ever actually implement any of those plans, nothing will ever change. Even though having a good plan is one thing that can move you forward and start your change, it's very easy to get caught up in the details of that planning. You've definitely got to make a plan if you want to get out of debt. But if you don't actually implement that plan, then you will stay in debt and possibly even grow deeper into debt. If you come up with a plan to buy a boat, but never implement any or all of that plan and saving up for it, then you may never own that boat. And if you want to move to another city, you not only need to plan, but you need to do things that conquer that plan in order to make that plan happen. Even the small steps, you have to do this. No one's going to do it for you. Like I said earlier, every small step adds up to bigger steps, and eventually you get there. Moving forward, one decision at a time is still moving forward, even if your planning only involves one decision at a time. Some people, like me, have difficulty planning. Planning actually kind of stresses me out a bit. And I can plan my next step or even my next 3 steps, but anything beyond that is kind of overwhelming to me. And I tend to shut down. I have to be very aware of this because I am typically not a huge planner. I am more of a spontaneous person, but I've learned to be okay with that too because we need those in this world as well. And I've learned to love that about myself. But because planning adds additional stress to my brain, I really have a hard time making long-term plans. And that doesn't mean that I get a pass. I still have to do it if I want to be successful in certain areas. I can see our long-term financial plans, but I have to know what my next step is right now in order to achieve that long-term goal. One of our financial plans is to be able to pay cash for our kids' college, but if I start to think in terms of just paying cash for my kids' college, it is very overwhelming to me. And I have to think in small steps, kind of back up from there and think, what small thing or one step can I do today in order for that money to be there when it's time? I have to break it down. Maybe it's not buy a certain item and take that money and put it away. And every dollar counts. It all adds up. You could dollar yourself to death by spending money here and there. And then when it comes time, there's no money. So this is what I have to do, and it works. Then voila. When it's time for that purchase, the money is there. But it takes small, broken down steps for me, and I can't allow myself to think past that, or it tends to cause my brain to just shut down. And I think there's actually something in the Bible about that. In Matthew 6:34, it says, "Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Today's trouble is enough for today." Yeah, right? So in your mind, do you think that today's trouble could be conjuring up the actual courage that we need in order to change our tomorrow? Possibly. Someone else that I've been following for a few years is Leo Babauta. And I've mentioned him before in other episodes. He has a website called Zen Habits, and also a book called Essential Zen Habits, Mastering the Art of Change. At the time of this episode release, it is available on Kindle for $6.99, and you can find a link to that on my website under the show notes for this episode, and I encourage you to check that out. There's also another book that I have not read, but I've heard it recommended by others who I like and follow and trust, and the name of that book is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It is also available on Kindle and paperback if you are one of those who actually enjoys turning the pages and touching them and sniffing the ink and glue on the pages. You know who you are, right? And you can find a link to that book as well in my show notes under this episode. I encourage you to go there and check out both of those. So I hope that I was able to encourage you today, and I'd love for you to leave me a comment on either my Facebook page or Instagram or my website and let me know how you've been encouraged by this episode or by previous episodes. What changes or habits do you currently need to make in order to make your life better? I'd love to know. So thank you for listening today, and I look forward to our time together again very soon. If you like Tea of Life podcast and you've got two friends who want to create the life that they love to live, tell them about us. Find us on your favorite social media platform like Facebook or Instagram. Also, right now before you forget, go to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts and search for Tea of Life podcast. Hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode. Thank you for listening to Tea of Life podcast. We will see you next Thursday.